losses create grief. And so it's not just the death of someone important, it can be any kind of loss. It can be, and losses can be transitions. So I've seen people struggle with grief when something that in general looked positive. So the kind of work that I do in therapy is more depth work, it's shadow work, it's quite a lot. And I've seen people as they start to heal in really profound ways actually start to grieve the loss of the person they were, which can be very confusing for them because they're like, I didn't want to be this person. That's why I came to see you, and not recognize that this is actually a really normal part because that version of them got them to that place. And as they start to grow out of it or heal out of it, there is a sense of grief and loss that is very normal. It's a very normal part. Some other ways that we can experience grief or loss can be during transitions in life. So when we go from, I don't know, being in school or college into the workforce, that can create some grief. Or going from work into retirement, that create grief. Or if we have, friend groups and we're incredibly close, and then people start to move into different stages of life, and maybe we don't all follow the same stage. If I think about the friends I had at 18, many of us are in very different stages. Some had children, some got married, some did not do that. Some followed really uh, they went into the workforce and really dedicated their life into that. Some became incredibly spiritual and their life transformed in that route. So there's a lot of ways in which loss happens. Most of life, loss is just a normal part, and that can be really helpful to start to normalize that for us because oftentimes when loss happens, our go-to is we think that we did something wrong or it's only happening to us, and it's actually very universal, and maybe we didn't do anything wrong. It's just what happens. We meet and then at some point we part. Our reputation, our relationship, it rises, but then it inevitably falls. you know Things collect and then they disperse. This is just the normal part of life. So what I wanted to talk about today is how do we support ourselves so that we can have um, good grief, you know, grief that is meaningful, and there can be pain in meaning. It's not just all positive. But how do we move from maybe an experience of grief that seems very empty and very draining to one that moves us into a better version of ourselves? I think one piece is not giving yourself limits of time to experience grief. Grief can be a lifelong process. It can visit here and there. I remember a therapist that I had once told me grief is like a soccer ball in a room, and it's just constantly moving. Sometimes it's right next to you, sometimes it's way in the corner, but it's always just moving. And I think that that was a very helpful analogy to understand at the time my own grief. And even today, that same thing that I worked on, I guess it was 20 years ago, will still sometimes visit me. And there's space for that, and it's okay.